Welcome and ni hao. This is the Beijing Real. Here we are in Beijing, China, at a beautiful hutong, right in the middle of the city. Thanks to CIB Studio, our sponsor here, for letting us use this space. Today, we're going to be interviewing a man. His name is Tim. Tim is a man who experienced the evolution of fitness in China firsthand. He's a student of Ido Portal, a fitness guru, a quantified self-expert, and the co-founder of CrossFit Slash here in Beijing. So Tim, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So just to start and kind of introduce yourself, when people ask you, what do? How do you answer that question?
I run a gym, basically. That's the simple answer.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So a gym in Beijing, and you run it. And how did you get to Beijing? I mean, why are you here in the first place, I guess?
So I came here in 2010 to learn Chinese. I had a job in the UK that was immensely unfulfilling, and I realized that I wanted to do something that was more interesting, but I didn't know how to go about doing that. And so I thought that I like learning languages, so I decided that I would go learn a language, and I picked Chinese based on what I perceived to be the kind of the potential of China at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came here. I spent a semester in a language program at BLCU, which is the Language and Culture University up in Haidian District in the northwest of Beijing. And subsequently, I just kind of stayed and built a gym pretty much by accident after that.
Wow, okay. And how long have you been here exactly?
So it's about 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Long time. And can you tell us about your best day in Beijing out of those 5 years?
So that's one of the interesting facets of living here in China that, I mean, a best day is pretty hard to describe, but I guess if I were to describe the best weirdest day, it would be about three and a half years ago now. I just finished work on a Sunday evening, and I got a phone call from an unknown number, and I answered the phone, and a guy started talking to me, saying, "Hey, are you coming out tonight?" And I didn't know what to say. I was like, who is this? Hey, who's talking to me? And he was like, hey, we met in the elevator in Zhongguancun like 6 months ago. And so it turns out that this is a guy who I was at a place called Zhongguancun in Beijing, which is, I guess, kind of equivalent to the Silicon Valley of China. It's where Lenovo is based, and you can go and buy any electronics you want or get anything fixed. And I was literally in an elevator, and he walked in with about 8 or 9 iPhones in a bag, brand new iPhones, and he's like, "Hey, you look handsome. Can I have your phone number?" And that sounds a little bit odd, but it doesn't have the same connotations that it does in the West. Anyway, I had a quick chat to him, and I gave him my phone number, and I didn't hear from him for 6 months until this Sunday evening. And I was back to the story. He says, "Are you coming out tonight?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "We're all going to party. Are you coming?" And I was like, and he's like, "Okay, I'm sending a car."
Mm.
"Where are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm in Bagou, which is northwest Beijing." And so about 15 minutes later, this car arrives with 4 Chinese guys in it, and they're like, "Come on, get in." Blacked out windows, and I was like, all right, let's see where this goes. And we just drove for about 45 minutes to an hour, and ended up in this hotel on the outskirts of Beijing, where this guy proceeded to kind of welcome me with open arms. We went to a spa, got massages, got like plunge pool, and then he took me to dinner. Gave me some rice that he told me is worth several thousand renminbi, which is I don't know, worth for in dollar terms about $300-400 or something like that, which is crazy. Yeah, and I have still to this day I have no idea what was on the rice, some kind of golden substance. Anyway, he then takes me to his KTV where his friends are all there, and they just take it in turns trying to get me really, really drunk.
Mm-hmm.
But the beer here is very weak. It's only like 2-3%. So there's like 5 guys, and they're just like, cheers, and then you drink. Next one, cheers, and then I drink. Next one, cheers, and then I drink. And so by the end of the evening, I was just horribly bloated and not that drunk, and these guys are all absolutely wasted on the floor. And then he's like, hey, come and meet the big boss. And I walk into what looks like a mobster's room, and there's just stacks of cash and just knives and odd things everywhere. And then finally, at about 3 a.m, after some more singing and some more like drinking, he's like, all right, we're all going home, I'll drop you home. And so we're driving on the motorway back into Beijing, and he just stops in the middle of the motorway, and the guy in the front seat looks over at him, and they start talking, and I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna lose a kidney here or something. And then the big guy who called me just hands over just an envelope full of money, just stuffed with money. And then this guy gets out of the car. The other guy gets out of the car in the middle of the motorway in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. No exits, no nothing in sight, and he just walks off into the darkness. And then I get driven home, just wondering what the hell happened the whole night. It was just really bizarre, but it summed up China for me in so many ways.
When was this?
This was like 2011.
So you just had recently moved here?
It was the end of 2011, so I'd been here for probably just over a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just incredibly odd, but incredibly just informative, but also fun, but also partly intimidating, and it was just a very, very unusual experience that you don't kind of bump into back in the UK.
Yeah. US either. I have to say it's but that's one of the things about being in China. You have to be willing to kind of take a risk and sort of step out of your comfort zone and just, take an adventure opportunity when you have it. So good for you, man. Kind of to segue from that, what has been the biggest mistake you've made here? That could have been the biggest one, but luckily you didn't lose a kidney. So
no.
Besides that, what is the biggest mistake?
I mean, that guy subsequently, he obviously has a lot of money, and he invited me to go like partying with him in future, and he told me to bring foreign girls because he wanted to party with foreign girls, and so I knew what the deal was. He wants to try and find a foreign girlfriend as a kind of big up his face, make him face is a massive concept here. We're trying to make him look really good in front of his minions and his peers, and so I invited a few of my friends along, and one of them was Colombian, and we were all in this club, and he doesn't really speak any English, so he has trouble speaking to all these girls anyway. But he comes over to me and he's like, "She's too dark. Don't bring any like her again."
Really?
So that was a mistake, but that was not the biggest mistake.
They like the white, like very white.
Yeah. No, my biggest mistake has probably been not asking for help more, because Beijing as a community, and this applies throughout the Chinese community and throughout the Western community, not in equal measures, but it's easy to find Chinese people who are very helpful and very willing to give. It's equally very easy to find Western people who are, or not even West, just non-Chinese people who are eager to help. Because a lot of us are all in the same boat, really. There's a lot of Chinese people who are economic migrants to Beijing, just like there's a lot of Western people who are not necessarily economic migrants, but trying to do something to improve the quality of life or the quality of life for other people, but don't necessarily know how to do it. And so a lot of the time, I would have a problem getting something done, some government paperwork or something like that, and I would try and suffer through it, where I would have been much better off looking back now, talking to people who've already gone through it and just asking straight up, like, hey, what did you do?
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way to do this? Because everyone here is by and large very willing to help.
Mm-hmm.
So long as you're not asking for the world.
Yeah, wow. That's a good thing to know, especially for a newcomer to Beijing. Always ask for help and be willing to kind of put yourself out there. Huh?
Yeah, definitely. It's very welcoming so long as you make the effort to go out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good stuff. So you mentioned government paperwork. I know that's a huge problem here in China, and it's not so much a problem where there's no solution, but it's a problem because it takes time and it takes hoops that you have to jump through. And I guess to touch on that, what in the past month have you been working on the most? What have you been focusing on lately?
So I mean, for me, now I don't really have to deal with that because I have a Chinese partner, and it just makes a hell of a lot more sense to let a Chinese person deal with anything like that, because there's never any misunderstandings. I speak Chinese like to a decent level, but there's just no way that you can understand all of the implicit communication, all of the levels of bureaucracy as a foreigner here, unless you are immersed in it, like really, really immersed in it, which I'm not. So, I'm pretty thankful that I don't have to deal with that anymore. So I guess for me recently, most of what I've been concerned with is how to, because the gym now is technically 2.5 years old, a little bit older, nearly 3 years old, and what I've been concerned with is how to make it something that will stand out in the long term from other gyms, because there will be a lot of other gyms, there will be a lot of other, kind of copycats, but also other iterations, other similar kind of products, I guess, in the market as time progresses. And when I decided to commit to making a gym, my goal was to have it be something that would impact Chinese people in the long term, not just the foreign population here, not just the guys who might already have heard of CrossFit or who might already have heard of Ido or any of those things, but to change Chinese people's perceptions of a gym, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, so we know there is a movement here. There's an evolution happening with fitness, and I don't really know what it's going to become. So I kind of want to get your insight on what you see. But first, what was fitness in China, and what is it now?
So fitness in China, I guess you could previously divide it very neatly into two categories. You had kind of the Shaolin monks, the Olympians, the just the outstanding performers on the one end, who were plucked from an early age based on body proportions, genetic potential. You look at Yao Ming, and Yao Ming was basically genetically engineered to be a basketball player. So you have these guys who are on the one end of the spectrum, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have everybody else for whom physical activity was basically confined to group exercise and jump rope in school. And when I say group exercise, I mean like think of kind of aerobics, like 1980s aerobics or stuff like that. And that's what happens still in school playgrounds here. You'll see all the kids lined up, boom, 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 all at the same time, at break time. And so previously, there wasn't anything in the middle. There wasn't anything in between these two kind of polar opposites of just nothing and everything. So that was what I guess you were looking at 15 years ago, which is why China is able to produce some of the best table tennis players in the world and the best weightlifters in the world, and yet their football team is just useless. But now, with the development of the middle class, with the economic prosperity that China is experiencing, there's just increased popularity for basically everything. There's yoga, Pilates, pole dancing is becoming massive among demographics of women.
Yep.
For guys, bodybuilding has a cult following. CrossFit is starting to grow. You also have MMA becoming a big factor here, as these ideas are starting to kind of penetrate, and these people who are taking content from YouTube or taking content from whatever it may be in the West, and kind of sneaking it into China in various different formats, and people get to see, people get to see, say, the UFC, and they think, oh wow, like, I'm a martial artist, I should be able to kick that guy's ass. So I don't know, let's try it. And there's some harsh lessons that are learned in the process, but everything is just growing exponentially.
I see that too. And it is an evolution. It's crazy how, and I love how you brought up the schools. The kids, it's totally different in the West. Anyway, America anyway, I know for sure it's different. It's kind of nice. We got some music here. This is what the Hutong's all about, by the way. So, also now, right, fitness in China is becoming something. It's becoming more like trends that are happening outside of China. You mentioned CrossFit, you mentioned MMA. In order to stay healthy and stay fit, do you see certain challenges being in Beijing? I know Beijing's been in the news lately because of the pollution, and obviously a lot of the food does have toxins and heavy metals, but I mean, do you find it a challenge? And then if you do, how do you kind of work around that?
So staying fit and healthy in Beijing is not challenging, just in the same way as staying fit and healthy in the USA is not challenging, even though there are challenges. If you want to stay fit and healthy, you will stay fit and healthy. If you're not that bothered, you won't. I can say that it's more difficult to do certain things. Like, if you want to run a marathon and you want to run fast, this is not the place to live to train. Like, you just lose too many days to high pollution because you just don't want to be running in that. And it's not like every day is horrible. And actually, the funny thing about the news was that everyone was reporting this red alert, which was, you know, the last couple of days. And yet 2 weeks ago it was far worse, and nobody knew about it.
Right.
Now today is blue sky and like pretty low, comparable to somewhere like LA or London.
Right.
So it's really not that difficult if you want to, you know, like there's groups where you can go rock climbing, there's groups where you can go skiing, snowboarding. It's very easy to find like Tai Chi, or, you know, there are good gyms now. There's just like anywhere, like if you want to stay fit and healthy, you will. And if that's part of your priority, then in life, then it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
There's always excuses, but you know.
I like that. Yeah, there is no excuse. You gotta stay fit, gotta stay healthy. In Beijing or in California, do it either way.
Right.
I love that. Couple more things. With staying healthy, okay, I believe there's a 20-80 to everything, right? Where it's 20% of the things you do give you 80% of the results. What are those 20% for staying fit, staying healthy? And they can be related to CrossFit, don't have to be, but just in that general sense. 20% of the stuff that you do that gives you 80% of the results. What are those things?
So if I were to boil it down into a couple of things, category number one would be eating just nutritious foods, just regularly, like, and a variety of them. So, you know, leafy vegetables, root vegetables, just all kinds, a lot of vegetables on a daily basis, plus some meat and some good fats. That's going to do like a world of good for most people. So that would be kind of number one. And it sounds really simple, but for some reason, a lot of people freak out when you tell them to do that. Then number two would be lift heavy stuff in some form, in some shape or form, like relatively regularly. It doesn't have to be regimented, but if you can't lift heavy stuff, if you don't have the strength to do that, that is one of the kind of the biggest predictors of mortality. And there's a variety of studies dating back 30 years that show this. And then the other thing would be to just deal with stress. So I just read about a study where they did it with pigs, and they realized that there's like two types of pigs, that they're called proactive and reactive pigs. So if you stress a pig by doing, I don't know, you making loud noises, let's say, you just make loud noises. Proactive pigs get angry and try and like attack stuff, or like just there's a response, there's an aggressive response from them. Whereas reactive pigs kind of withdraw into themselves and go quiet and don't really do or seem to do that much. But the biochemical response is completely different. So the proactive pigs are stressed, are actively stressed, and their blood reflects that. They have all these markers that your doctor will tell you, lead to cancer, lead to diabetes, lead to heart disease, lead to all these things that we in the West especially are experiencing epidemics of. And then the reactive pigs don't. They don't show any of these signs. Now, obviously, we're not pigs, so it's not necessarily going to be that simple with humans. But living in Beijing, there are a lot of things that happen to you that can and will make you very, very angry. Like, for example, yesterday I tried to send a letter, a driver's license of a client who left his driver's license in the gym. I tried to send a driver's license to India. All right, it's his driver's license. He needs it back in India, and it should be really, really simple. Mm-hmm. I phoned up UPS, FedEx, China Post. I tried probably 5 different companies, and none of them would let me send a driver's license to India. None of them.
From China.
From China. None of them. And I spent like 2 hours with speaking to a bunch of people who are just like, they're just oxygen thieves. They're not doing anything. They're just like wasting my time. And it made me really, really angry. Mm-hmm. And then a few things happened later on in the day that just made me realize how absurd the whole thing is. Mm-hmm. And how, like, you could get angry, or you can just kind of, like, laugh at how horrible it all is. And the stress response in your body is very different for those two situations. Mm-hmm. So don't go crazy because of these things happening. Try and find a way to deal with stress that's productive and that helps you, whether that's like going to a boxing class and mm-hmm. smacking a bag as hard as you can.
That does feel good.
Or whether it's like doodling, or I don't know, doodling your boss and like the hangman's noose around his neck or something. I don't know.
Do you do that?
No.
Okay. No. Just in case he's watching, Tim does not do that.
I can't really doodle people. If I doodle abstract things. I can't draw
triangles.
Can't draw real life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good advice. So the top 3 things you say to stay fit and stay healthy are eating well, lots of veggies, lots of fats, lifting heavy things, and staying stress-free.
It's not staying stress-free. It's dealing with the stress in a way that doesn't make you tear your hair out.
That's great.
You can't stay stress-free. It's an impossible concept, and you wouldn't want to, because if you're never challenged, if you're never stressed, if you're never, you don't grow. But it's how you deal with that stress that matters. And,
mm-hmm. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, well, here we are in Beijing, guys. It's a beautiful blue sky, sunny day. And Tim, thank you so much for giving us this advice and telling us your story. It's really insightful, it's helpful, it's motivating, and inspirational. So thanks a lot. If people wanted to reach out to you somehow, or maybe find you or find your gym, what would be the best way to do that?
So we are, if you're in China, you can look us up on WeChat, CrossFit Slash. WeChat is the best way within China. Mm-hmm. Email info@crossfitslash.com. We're also on Instagram at CrossFit/. You can find us on Google pretty easily.
Great. So. That's CrossFit SLASH.
Yeah.
For everybody who doesn't know. And thanks. I have a chance to film inside the gym and maybe try a class or something. So.
Sure.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Look forward to it. Thanks.